I am going to show you how I make my patchwork quilt, which will completely demolish your scrap bin. Get some scraps of fabric. We're going to be cutting squares. You can use any size. It doesn't matter. I've made quilts from 2.5-inch squares all the way up to 12. They all look great. However big your square is will determine how fast the top comes together. Okay, so I've got my pile of scraps here, and I cut more manageable size pieces like this. And make sure to give everything a good press because it's too hard working with fabric with wrinkles everywhere. Okay, see, you can see they're all kind of just odd shaped. It doesn't matter because we're going to use what we can. So I like to stack my fabric, and I got out my Havel's 6.5-inch square because I use this often if I need a fast quilt top. For this one, since I already have so many squares cut, I'm going to use this 4-inch square. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to stack it so that I know when I'm cutting, I'm going to be cutting all fabric and everything's good here. All my sides are cut, or, whatever. Just, you know what I'm saying. I'm going to cut. See how that is? I'm going to cut. Now, usually I have my little spinny mat when I'm cutting these small ones, but this is easy enough. I don't have too many layers here. I've got 3 layers of fabric. A lot of times I'm cutting 10 or 12 layers of fabric at once. With this 60mm Havel's rotary cutter, it's simple. If you have any snags, just trim them with your scissors, no problem. Okay, so right there, I've got 3 squares immediately. So you can see how it can build pretty quickly. Let's do that again. And I can cut more from that pile. These little tiny shreds I save in a little mason jar because I can either bust them up for confetti pouches or use them as filler, like polyfill. I'll do that with my pillows and stuff. The shizzle. Okay, so I think you get the picture there. Use your fabric stash, scrap bin, use it all up. So now I'm going to show you how I put these together. Okay, so the most important thing when sewing these patchwork quilts, if you want all your seams to line up, I have a hair in my face, is to use a 1/4-inch foot or a patchwork foot. I didn't do this in the beginning, and sometimes my seams were not lining up perfectly. I didn't really care. If you don't have one, it's not a game stopper or an end, I don't know, what is that called? A showstopper. But if you have one, or if you can get one, they're worth it. So I don't do any sorting of my scraps at all. They're just all in this big pile, and I randomly grab them and start sewing them together with a 1/4-inch seam. I find that I like to build my rows first, and then I put my rows together, making sure that no fabrics are the same fabrics right beside each other or diagonal, whatever, you know what I'm saying. It's just easier for me that way. If you like to sort and pick, you can do that, but just know the tendency is to build the rows in the same way, even though you're trying not to. It's really weird, but our brains do that. So let's sew these together and see what happens. When I'm sewing these squares together, I don't pin. You can certainly pin if you're worried about it, but I find that holding them together is pretty simple and it's faster for me. So I just put two together, lining up the edges, and I line up that side of the foot there. Let me zoom in. This far side of the foot with the edge of the fabric, and I just look at that. I'm going to grab two more, and I just chain piece these as much as possible. Now this is fun, and what I have learned is I like to set these stitches first, and you set stitches by just giving them a press. So I'm going to bring this ironing pad over. Plus, working with really nicely pressed fabric is so pleasing because it doesn't want to misbehave as much on you. So these are sewn together, and I'm just going to press those stitched edges real quick. It doesn't take long. Okay. So now I'm going to open towards the darker side of the fabric so the seam will fall to the darker side and give it a press. So a lot of times when I get to building 4, I just do the same thing and hold them together, lining up that one edge, and feed it through the machine just like I did with the 2s. Sometimes I will just go ahead and build a bunch of these sets, put a pin in, and then chain them all through really fast. So I always pin towards the seam that I want to sew. It's kind of like a, hey, this is the side you want to sew together. This is how the row is going to be built. Otherwise, I would probably sew the wrong edge. And I just stack them up and take them to the machine. Okay, I've got my stacks here. So now we'll repeat the same process. Move all my pins out. And while it's together here, really cute and manageable, I'm just going to set those seams. I'm going to move that seam the other direction so that I don't get a shadow in that cream colored fabric. Same with this one. I'm pressing it towards the green. Okay. So now I'm just going to put these together to build bigger rows. I'm going to do this one with this one and stick a pin in. Now for sure at this point I always pin. And this one and this one will look cute. So we're going to have rows of 8 here. And then this one's left over, which is perfect because we'll have a 16 and we'll just add 4. This one will be 16 and we'll add another row of 4. I've got one over here somewhere. Hit my knee. I don't worry too much about lock stitching these seams because they're all going to be sewn several more times. You can if you want, you're not wrong. I just don't. I'm going to go ahead and cut one of these, cut these apart, there. So I've got this row here, which is 8. I'm going to add it to this row right now, which is another 8. Let me back it up. Here's the first one, here's the second one. I want to make sure they're going to contrast. I think I'm going to do it this way. Now, since I'm only working with the one row, I'm confident I can hold it together here. So now this row is 16 long, and I'm just going to go add my last 4, and I have a full row done. Pressing my seams. So in just a few minutes, I have a full row built. And what I usually do is lay this out on my living room floor, to be honest, and just start building the rows and laying them on the floor, one right after the other, stacked on top, you know, like a quilt top. And keep going. So these are rows of 20, and I like 400 squares in my quilt, so I do 20 rows. You can do whatever you want. Let's keep going. you can see, these really start building fast. It's super fun. You can get a quilt top done in a day if you have a solid couple of hours. And then what we're going to do is sew these rows together. So the reason I like to lay it out on the floor is just to make sure that I'm not putting two fabrics of the same kind near each other. A couple of squares away is probably going to be okay, but I really like to take the time to make sure that in this row no two fabrics are too much alike or the same. And this one looks like it's okay, so I'm going to show you what I do. Okay, so I've laid them out on the floor and made sure that this entire row, none of them are the same. Even though these two are reddish orange, it's going to look great. I'm not too worried about that. So I press again, making sure everything is really nice and flat and that I haven't messed up too terribly with my 1/4 inch seam. If I have, sometimes I'll just unpick it and resew it, no big deal. Now I'm just going to lay this over and I'm matching up my seams. So this is where the technocrats like to get judgy. Usually when you nest your seams, you want one seam to go one way and the other seam to go the other way. That ensures that the seam sits nicely, it's going to be flat, it's going to lock. I usually do make sure that that is happening. Now on the few seams that I have to iron the other way because this side's dark and this side's light, I just do the best I can. So it could be that not 100% of the seams are nested, but I'm okay with that and it still goes together just fine. So this one, let me zoom in here for you. Move my pins. This one, this seam is going that way, the top seam is going this way. And I'm going to stick my pin through all the layers and up. And I'm pinning towards the side that I want to sew so that it's real easy to pull out the pins as I'm sewing. This one. Now some people don't like to pin every connection here, but I've learned my lesson the hard way. I tend to pull sometimes on my fabric and I'll mess those seams up. So I usually pin every one. It doesn't take that long. now I'm just going to keep doing the same process, and I'm going to sew these 2 rows to these 2 rows, and then I'll have a group of 4. And again, I'm making sure that I don't have any 2 of the same fabric right on top or next to each other. I'm not sure I like these 2 grays sitting beside each other. So I think I'm just going to flip this around and see if this way it looks all right. I think I like that. Okay, we're back here. So I build up all my sections like this, and I just keep doubling. So now I've got 4 rows here and 4 rows here, and I'm going to put them together exactly the same way that we've been doing. So simple. And you just keep doubling, doubling, and doubling, and pretty soon you've got an entire quilt top. I did want to mention really quick, try not to sweat too much on your seams, because when this entire quilt is built and together, nobody's going to come in here and go, oh, look at this seam, it's 1/8 of an inch off. You know, I mean, just make your quilt, just sew, feel good, have a good time, and don't sweat the small stuff, right? Those are some good books, by the way. I love reading those. All right, let's continue sewing, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. So I'm going to keep sewing, but in the meantime, I wanted to show you a finished quilt. This is with the 4-inch squares. Yay! And I did the pom-pom trim around the edge. On my blog, hungryhippiesews.com, I show you how I attach that pom-pom trim. But I just love this. See, you can't go wrong. You're not seeing my mistakes, are you? No, say no. So that's fun. And then on this one, I use 6.5-inch squares. And it's really big. I love this one. I have this on my bed a lot. And on the back, it's super fast if you use a wide back print. Those 108-inch prints, I just love them. And then if quilting just seems a little too daunting and you're not up for it, make a pillow. These are 3.5-inch squares, and I just sew them together just like the quilt. I have a tutorial for this in kits in the shop if you want to make one of these. And you can add the pom-pom trim or not. And it's just an envelope backing. You can't even hardly see it with this Tula fabric. I love it. And that is a really fun gift, and it's a great way to use up your scraps in your scrap bin. So keep sewing. Just go for it. Begin. It really doesn't matter if your seams are perfect or not. Just make. See you soon.